morning, afternoon, evening, everybody, depending on what time you're watching this, of course. So today I'm going to take a slight movement away from history, my history, IT history, all that kind of stuff. Although I have to admit, this is a skill that I've used throughout all my IT, I can't speak today, all my IT history. But we'll come down in a second. It's a skill that you need to practice. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment, and all that kind of stuff. Let's get that out of the way first. So this skill is a skill that you do need to practice. If you don't, when you come to need it, you'll be out of practice and not very good, shall we say. And that is an interview, or rather being interviewed, because obviously giving interviews is a completely different skill. Being interviewed is a skill on its own, and something that you definitely need to not just learn but keep on top of. So I've always done these things called interview practice throughout my entire history of working in IT. And so if I've been working for a company for a number of years, usually no more than two to start with, because obviously the first year you're kind of really getting up to skill, and second year you're kind of using your skills. But then after that second year, I find that your current market's skills can stagnate because you're basically just working on the stuff that is within the group that you work in. And so I always decide to do these interview practice things. And what it is it can be internal as well, because if you're with a large company, a lot of the time you want to move into group, you have to do an interview internally. It's maybe slightly different, but it's still an interview. But what I will do, I'll look for a very interesting role, and I will basically try and get an interview, and then I will do the interview. And if I happen that you got a offer and it was something you really want to do, and brilliant, you can, if you want to do it, then you can do it. But by doing this interview, you're kind of practicing and also using your previously learned skills and just kind of making them fresh. If I'm looking for a new role in a very positive way and I have a number of interviews, I like to stack my interviews of the least important first, because again, if you haven't interviewed for a while, your skills can be very stagnant, and then doing those first few interviews will get you kind of mindset back up to date. At least for me, they do. And so therefore, when you do the interviews for the roles that you want to do, you've already had those other ones in your belt. Your nerves have calmed down a bit. You've maybe learned some of the questions that everybody asks, because I find that in a lot of interviews in the past that I've done, many companies will ask very similar questions when it relates to the same sort of language, for example. So interview practice is something you need to do if you want to kind of move in your career. If you want to stay at the same company for 30-40 years, then it may not be a necessary skill. But I'd say try and do these interview practice sessions every couple of years at least, just to keep yourself fresh. And actually, what? It's amazing when I've had these conversations and interviews, I've actually learnt stuff which I've then taken into roles. I've also given some of these companies ideas which they've taken into the product. So, interviews are a two-way street. But yeah, interview practice, definitely keep on top of it and try it. You'll be surprised when it's necessarily needed and how much easier it is having done those practices first. So that's it for this week. Get practicing, and next week I'll maybe delve back into a little bit more history. All right, beat you all next week. Bye for now.